If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you about it. It's free, which is amazing. And there are these really cool creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it's easy to be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. And you get to make money with no minimum listenership, which is really cool. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started right away. Wellnesspreneurs, are you ready to stop side hustling and start making an income doing what you love? It's time to pull up a seat and align your third eye on the prize. Each week, we will have conversations with successful creatives in wellness, business, marketing, and more to uncover practical methods to take you from A to B. My name is Jessica Cross, and I am so excited to link arms with you and get started. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode. It's Jess. I am so glad to be here with you today and to share this incredible chat I had with my friend Beth Bowen. She's a licensed master social worker and the head of content and coaching at the Reframe App. Her story is so incredible, and how she got started in her business is not exactly what you think. And she is so generous with giving us a peek behind the curtain, how she got started and how it's going now. And I think you're going to love this episode so much, and you're just going to love her too. So let's take a listen. All right. Hey, Beth.
Hey, Jessica.
Good to see you. Good to hear you as well.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I've been dreaming about this, and I am just so glad that we get to connect in this way, because for whatever reason, since we met like several years ago, I was like, I feel like we're going to be friends. I'm not sure how.
I feel like our paths crossed in many different ways, and it was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for kind of being open to the serendipity of it all. And I'm excited to chat with you and share this with everybody too.
Yeah, me too.
So we got to hear a little bit about you in the intro, but I would love it if you could just tell us a bit about your journey and, what brought you to today.
It is a very long and meandering story. I feel like there's like no starting point and probably no ending point at this point. But I think I told you when we first talked, I kind of have just been spilling my guts on the internet for the last decade, and in many odd and interesting ways, it has brought me to where I am today. So the work that I do today is kind of multifaceted. I work for a tech startup in the sobriety space, so it's kind of interesting. It's a mix of mental health and tech at the same time. But my background is in clinical social work. So I have my master's degree in social work and undergrad in psychology. Love the mental health field and this idea of mental wellness, really kind of integrating it more into the wellness space, and stumbled into this tech work after I went through a very long journey of changing my relationship with alcohol. So I have been sober for about 3.5 years now, going on 4 in September, and kind of did it on my own at first, and then started stepping into this alcohol-free community online, which is kind of my little home space. And through just sharing my story and connecting with others on this path, it really started marrying this idea of my personal experiences and my mental health background, and got me kind of into this idea of coaching and of working with other women who are changing their relationship with alcohol. And long story short, kind of eventually ended me in this more full-time position working in this tech space. So it's, like I said, there's not really a beginning, not really an end, and it's a very unusual path, but that's kind of where I've landed.
I love that. And I think that's what it's going to draw people to this episode too. And when you were telling me this story, I was like, wait, whoa, okay. Like, that's an interesting, as you said, meandering way.
Well, and I've been blogging since before it was ever cool. I blogged starting in 2013 when it was back on blogger.com, and it was very rudimentary. And I think I had a weight loss blog at the time, which is really funny because that's miles away from any of my ethos or interests these days. But yeah, I really believe in the power of storytelling and of opening ourselves up and letting ourselves be seen, and have this like compulsion to overshare, much to my mother's chagrin. And lo and behold, it really opened a lot of doors for me across the years.
That's amazing. And I giggled the first time you said spilling your guts on the internet since before it was cool. And I'm giggling now. But it's so true because you just started, like you just
Mm-hmm.
hopped right on in there. You didn't wait for someone to be like, hey, Beth, you should start a blog. It was like, what are blogs? Like, what is
Yeah.
that thing? And you were
Well,
like,
it's funny
no.
you say that because I actually, before blogging, was like in junior high. Was Zanga around when you, I don't know like what generation you are, but I was like blogging before it was even a thing. And it was like in junior high, and I'm like, Kyle is cute and I like him. And I'm like typing this away on my like private Zanga account. Going my gut.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we won't get into what generation I'm in, but yeah, it's crazy because we talk about like growing up in this world where it was like,
Mm,
there was the like come home when the street lights come on, and then like
yep.
blogging, and we've seen this whole like crazy change that's kind of brought us to where we are today. I just love that you were comfortable, you hopped in, and you knew like whatever I'm supposed to be doing is going to reveal itself from this process. It's
Mm.
so cool.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that you said that made me think of is this idea of not doing it, not having permission to do it, or not being told to do it. I think I have always operated from this idea of messy action over perfect inaction before I even had a catchphrase for that. You hear that all over the business world these days. But before that was even a thing, somebody taught me that really has just been how I've operated, and not because I know better than anybody else. I think like it goes back to that idea of this compulsion to overshare. But I really have always at the heart believed like we're better and more compelling when we're operating from authenticity and operating from just like this human version of ourselves who does things without being perfect and does things that feel right and shares stories in places that maybe nobody else is doing yet, or nobody else is sharing yet, but just knowing that that feels good for us in the moment. And I think that there's a lot of that's a very compelling thing to see in another person. So whether or not I knew what I was doing, I think that that is kind of how all of these messy, very messy and at times steps that I've taken over time have gotten me to where I am now.
I'm glad you leaned into that, and as tried as it can be in the business world, the messy action thing is what moves you forward. It
Mm-hmm.
gets you out of that perfection. And I say you, I mean me, like
Yeah.
too, like I'm in it all the time. And I just love talking to other business owners and people in this space who are like, they recognize it
Mhm.
and they do it anyway. They
Yeah.
just keep going. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So good. So good. So I know this whole process of spilling your guts on the internet and working in social work and your own personal experiences has kind of brought you, this has been the genesis of your journey into the sobriety space. So, and helping others through your coaching practice, like, so how's that all going? How's it all working for you these days?
I mean, it's a work in progress. Everything is a work in progress.
Yeah.
So we've had a really busy year because I started in a personal coaching business where I was working with clients one on one in a group setting, and have made this pivot into more of, it's not corporate because it's still startup, but more of this structured business space. But I love that I can still bring in all the pieces, the human pieces to it. So it's tech, but it's deeply human. It's this app that helps people change their relationship with alcohol, which is inherently such a personal thing. And we really do have a lot of space to keep it personal and to keep it where we're doing this hand in hand, because I think that has been the thing that has guided me from the beginning. I feel deeply connected to other people and believe strongly that we heal better when we do it together and when we do it openly and in the light. And so it's just really lovely to be able to bring all of these different pieces. So not only my formal background, my clinical training, but also my personal experiences with alcohol and with deciding to not drink alcohol anymore. And then just kind of learning how to navigate life from there. You know, we really do get to bring all of these different pieces in. So it's just really rewarding to get to do what I do. I still have to, pinch myself sometimes because I don't know how I landed in a tech leadership job as a social worker who likes to talk about our drinking problem on the internet. But here I am.
I love that. I love it. And you're getting to, at least from the parts that I understand of your role at Reframe, you're getting to create content, which I think is another thing that's like very like
Yeah.
dear to your heart.
So the core, to give a little more background about the app, Reframe is an app that is based in a neuroscience and psychology framework for changing your relationship with alcohol, whether that is cutting back or quitting entirely. And we really approach it kind of as a modern version of mindful drinking or changing your relationship with alcohol, because the black and white labels don't work for a lot of people. They didn't work for me, and it's this kind of stepping into a different way of doing things. So I do write the content for it. So it is we have like a 365-day habit change program, which is kind of the base of it. But then we also have other components built in, like coping mechanisms. We have a whole like meditation library. We have a lot of things. We've got some coaching. We've got a forum. So it really is a multifaceted thing, which makes it really fun for me because I get to kind of, if I can dream it, I get to do it. So we get to really build a lot of neat features into this program that it calls on a lot of different modalities and a lot of different fields. And we have a little bit of a kitchen sink approach where it's like we'll provide you all of the information and you take what works for you. And I think that idea of no one right way is such a core principle for so many things. Like, it doesn't have to just be about changing your relationship with alcohol. Understanding like there's no one right way to be a business person or to be a person who is expanding their reach through social media or whatever that looks like. Just understanding that whoever tells you that you have to do it this way, it's that's BS. There's no one right way to do anything. And we really do take that kind of approach at Reframe. We just give you all the information and you can take what you want from it.
Well, that's beautiful. And I also don't drink alcohol. I've been in bed for a couple of years. It just kind of took a break, and it was it was a conscious decision, but it was also something I was like, I'm just going to try this for a little bit and see. And at the time, I didn't know about, and maybe Reframe wasn't even a thing yet.
Yeah,
who knows?
We're new.
Probably brand new, but it's so nice that I think maybe if I had known about something like a resource like Reframe before, especially because it's like, oh, it's got meditations and all that's like totally my jam, I might have considered it sooner.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you say that because I know a lot of folks in the wellness spaces who are starting to decide that it just doesn't work for them or doesn't serve them or doesn't align with the other pieces of their wellness life, whether that's professionally or personally, and stepping back from it. But you're right. So I quit drinking 3.5 years ago, and at the time there really wasn't. There was one thing out there that was talking about a different way of being a person who doesn't live with alcohol in their lives, that wasn't the 12 steps. And so I kind of clung onto that, really, really closely. But there's this really vibrant, big community of people who are choosing not to drink that has developed over the last couple of years. And there are folks from all walks of life. I personally, my story is one of falling into addiction. My alcohol use escalated really heavily when I had my first son, who I warned you earlier, he might walk in without his pants on, but he was 2 when I quit drinking. And I found early motherhood to be a time when my alcohol use really increased because I was lacking in any other sort of coping mechanism. I didn't have anything to calm my central nervous system down. I bought into the mommy wine culture, hook, line, and sinker. So that's when I found myself struggling with alcohol. So I personally come from more of this addiction standpoint. I don't identify with any sort of label. But I also know lots of people who come to it from a health standpoint or a wellness standpoint, or they tell me, I know this is the one thing holding me back from the job promotion I want. And it's really interesting when you take this one thing away to see all of the other things that it opens up. And I find people have a lot of fear about that before actually putting one foot in front of the other and taking that first step. Because it's like, gosh, how do I live in this world, which is a very alcohol friendly, boozy world? How do I live in this world without this substance that tells me that I'm fun and I'm social and I'm glamorous with it? And how do I go to social events without drinking? And then you do it and you realize, okay, it wasn't that bad. I can do this. And I really just think it's so cool to hear about more people deciding this for different reasons. And I think, the whole basis of I guess before I had language to express this, but I've always believed that our stories open doors for other people, which has kind of been why I've spilled my guts on the internet for so long, and has really built a lot of rich connections in my life from people reading my words and being like, oh my gosh, me too. And I think that that's the case with alcohol too. So when people hear me tell my story about early motherhood, then that gives them permission to step into something new. Or somebody like you, who is a leader in the wellness industry and then the business industry, saying that opens the door for someone else to say, maybe this is something I should do. And not to say that people call me an influencer, it drives me crazy, but it really is this idea of giving people permission to try something a different way.
I love that. I see why the word influencer isn't quite a good match.
Yeah, it's not the best fit.
in
There's
several
a
ways.
whole field of sober influencers, and I think it's not my scene.
Yeah,
Not
interesting. Interesting. I had not considered that, and I think I will now.
Yeah.
From your words, like you said, it's something else to consider. I think it's so powerful what you said, because we are inundated with this culture, and we don't, at least I didn't know that there was another way. It just was a part of the way we did things. It's I also work in events. Events
Yes.
are very alcohol centric.
Yes.
It's getting better. People are starting to ask about other options and ways to sweeten experiences that aren't solely focused on alcohol.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah, it is happening. Slowly but surely, it's happening. It's funny you say that, because my husband's business gives, they already did this before he started working there, but they give their clients a free bottle of wine when they're a new client. And I'm not always the most fun person at parties. Often I love going to parties. I love being social. But sometimes my viewpoints around alcohol are not like the most pleasant. What am I trying to say? But basically, I've never brought this up. I never brought it up, but the whole time in my head, I was like, they're giving wine to people who probably shouldn't have wine, or making somebody who doesn't drink feel uncomfortable for saying no, or just this. But it's a very subtle shift that people don't make until somebody who has struggled. And just the other day, he asked me. He goes, "Hey, I think we need to have a non-alcoholic option. What do you think we should gift?" And I was like, "Oh, ding, 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 ding." 3 years in, we're starting to have this shift of understanding that not everyone drinks alcohol, and it's having it as the only option and having it as something that is the norm is restrictive in a lot of ways. And I think we're getting better at understanding that. The word that comes to mind is cultural appropriate. No, that's not the right word. Political correctness. That's not the point I'm going for, but this idea of understanding that what is our reality and what is the way we view the world is not necessarily the way everyone else views the world. And opening access to more options. So we're getting there. It's a process. As you know, as a person who doesn't drink, it's still a very boozy culture in a very boozy world. But I think we're starting to get up to a point where there are more options for people. And it really, when I think about when I quit 3.5 years ago and there was one person on the internet talking about living without alcohol, in a way that was different than the traditional ways. And now there are hundreds of people talking about this in different ways. I think we're getting there.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's almost a part of this cultural reckoning that we're
Mm,
already going through.
mm-hmm,
It's another layer. We're
mm.
questioning things in ways that we never would have before. It's just part of it.
Yeah, and I think too, I think a lot of young people, it's interesting to see the data, but a lot of the younger Gen X, no, Gen Zs, um, are just not even starting to drink to begin with, which is very
Mm,
interesting because I think the shift in this idea of wellness is changing too, and we're realizing, we eat organic and we go to yoga class and we buy sustainable products and then we drink something that's a neurotoxin. I think that there's starting to be a different perception of that among young people, especially. But there's just so much cultural and societal programming that we still have to kind of step out of the matrix a little bit for.
yeah. I didn't realize that there were studies that are showing people are at a younger
Yeah.
age choosing not
Mm-hmm.
to. That's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah, like millennials and older still drink pretty heavily, but some of the younger Gen Zs are drinking less.
It's very interesting. I remember, I started drinking at a very young age.
Hmm.
Definitely before it was legal
Yeah.
for me.
Right.
I think that's common. I think many people do or did at least for our generations. And I remember having a friend who didn't, and
Mm.
that was his thing. And I remember being so perplexed by it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now like to your point and in the data, it's more and more common. And I love that people are being exposed to the idea just sooner.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny that you say that because I was always the person who would like give somebody a hard time if they didn't drink, or if I found out a woman didn't drink wine, I'd be like, "Oh, we can't be friends."
Yes.
But now I'm that person now.
Yeah, the layers of like social pressure are
Mm.
really intense, and I find too they still are in some circles.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, and we may have talked about this before, but for the listeners, I think we talked about a little bit, being in those situations where everybody's drinking and you're not, and it's almost as if they think you're passing judgment on them
Mm.
in some
Yes.
way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Every negative reaction I've ever gotten to somebody when I've told them that I don't drink alcohol, usually I find out later on, and this has confirmed my belief, that they had a lot of stuff coming up. That my choice to not drink brought up a lot of stuff for them. Stuff that had never crossed my mind is not on my mind. It's not what I'm there for. I'm there to do my own thing. But I've had several friends who, years later have been like, well, I realized this isn't working for me and I don't drink anymore. So when I work with somebody who is new to this and is starting to go out into the world and is afraid of what others will say about them not drinking, and like you said, are afraid that other people will think they're judging, and all of these kind of projected feelings that we all project onto each other and throw onto each other. The root of it is I've found to be most true that somebody else's negative reaction to me not drinking is much more about them than it is about me. And just this understanding that we all have our own stuff. I don't know if I can curse on here. We all have our own stuff.
You can.
That okay, we've all got our own shit, and we really project that onto each other, and just rooting back into this idea that we can go our own way without like having to have this confirmation from other people. We can know what's right for us without having to align with what everyone else is doing, and we can really just kind of stay in our own lane. I think that's what it comes down to. Removing alcohol was probably the number one most instructive thing in my life around boundaries, it really was the catalyst for learning how to build boundaries and how to stick to my boundaries and how to gently enforce them with other people. And, talking about going into a room with a bunch of people who drink and you're around alcohol, choosing to live without alcohol has really shown me what I will and will not do and what I do and do not enjoy, and has given me the freedom to not feel like I need to show up in an inauthentic way just to please somebody else. So whether that's a bar or whether that is going to a party where there are a bunch of drinking games, like I just know for myself there are things that it's not necessarily that I'll be triggered if I'm around. I don't crave alcohol anymore. I don't. It's just something that's not on my radar. But I don't have fun if everyone's playing beer pong and I'm just like, everyone's getting sloppy, and I've learned that that's not fun for me. And so rather than trying to power through that, rather than try to feel cool and stick around, I've just learned what doesn't work for me. And I find that very freeing, and I find that has been very instructive for other pieces of my life as far as establishing boundaries, as far as knowing my limits, knowing what I can and cannot mess with, and what just doesn't feel good, and has given me the permission and the language and the practice, because it's so rooted in practice, to start applying these boundaries elsewhere, to have boundaries around my work hours, to have boundaries around my time with my kids, to have boundaries around the kind of energy and the kind of people that I spend my precious time with, because time is very precious. I don't have enough of it. And so it's really interesting when I come back to this idea that this one thing, this one liquid that I was drinking, has really instructed me in so many different ways to create a more holistic wellness life. That's not the right word I'm looking for. More of a holistic, well-rounded life. Just by not drinking. But yeah, I think it's hard when you're new to it and you're going out into social situations, and I am not really one to sugarcoat that. It's practice. It's always practice. It's never as hard as the first time, and you get better every time.
That's amazing advice. It really, really is. You kind of have to lean into it a few times to feel out your boundaries and figure out what feels good and what doesn't, and how
Well,
you'll
and I think
navigate it.
it roots in this idea of discomfort, and how discomfort is not always wrong or bad. And I think a lot of us come to using alcohol to get out of discomfort, and we use it to change our state pretty quickly so that we get into a different feeling. We get out of this uncomfortable feeling. We get into relaxation or elation or whatever we're seeking. And so first off, we unlearn how to sit with discomfort. So we get worse at learning how to sit with discomfort because we're using something else, whether it's alcohol, whether it's TV or food or sex or whatever, to bypass this discomfort. So we've learned how to, or we've unlearned how to sit with this, and then we remove the one thing that is helping to numb down those feelings of discomfort or those uncomfortable feelings, and we remove it, and suddenly we feel everything really intensely. And especially with these social things, there is discomfort with it. It is not going to be easy the first time, and learning to sit with a little bit of discomfort and learning to tolerate that and to get through it without numbing out, without distracting yourself, bypassing that feeling, builds tolerance and resistance for the next time. So it really does get easier with every single moment of discomfort that you were able to work through.
I can attest. I definitely had those moments too when I stopped drinking and things get, a little bit more intense. You just notice situations where you normally would, and you're like, oh, okay, this is different. And but like you said, it gets easier with time. It gets easier with every opportunity that you have to practice.
Well, and early sobriety is actually when I got into yoga and mindfulness. So, fun fact, when I first quit drinking, I came to this by Googling yoga to quit drinking. I did not practice yoga at that time, but I was like, those yoga people have their stuff together. I bet if I did yoga, I could fix myself. And yoga didn't fix me, but in many ways it did give me the tools and the skills to be able to sit with that discomfort and to not necessarily have to bypass it, which was a very foreign experience to me. That was something I was not familiar with. I was really used to glossing over feelings very quickly. And I think that there's so many beautiful tools within mindfulness and yoga and meditation and breath work and all of these things that really taught me to care for my central nervous system, which is at the root of it, a lot of where my alcohol use came from.
Yes. And I think yoga people are extra crazy. We need it the most.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny now that I practice yoga regularly enough. I'm like, oh, yoga people still don't know what they're doing,
Yeah,
but
no one knows.
they
No one
just
knows.
look like they're a little more zen.
Yeah, there's glimpses.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and speaking of, I hear that you're diving into yoga teacher training.
I am. I'm so excited. So, the way you and I know each other, obviously, you know this, but we go to the same yoga studio. I'm going to your summer solstice thing on Sunday or Saturday. I can't wait. Oh, that's tomorrow. That's so exciting.
I know, right?
Yeah, no, it's just been a dream for me for a long time, and it's something that I just kept kicking down the road and said I'll do it when I have more time. And I've got 2 kids and a full-time job, and it just never felt like the right time. But Soul Strong just came out with their online self-paced program, and so I jumped on it. It aligns perfectly with the pace and the way that I can learn this material and gain this knowledge, while still juggling all of the different plates that I've got spinning, because there are a lot of plates. But it's been a dream for me, because one of the things that has been really informative to the way that I go through this life without alcohol is this idea of giving back and of service to other people. My first step into this was gifted to me by somebody else. I was gifted a scholarship for a program, and I'm gonna get a little choked up thinking about it, but just this idea of being able to pay forward what I was given when I first quit drinking to somebody else through whatever that may be. And for me, I really see that as holding space in a yoga capacity, a teacher capacity, for folks who are sober, in recovery, wanting to be sober curious, whatever that looks like, but kind of some volunteer classes. So that has been a dream of mine for a long time. So I'm really excited.
Well, I'd like to share something. When I first met you in class, I actually thought you were a teacher already.
That's really funny, because I'm not the best yogi, but I do love it.
It's not even that. And I think that, we have these ideas of what a yoga teacher is, she can pop into a handstand, no problem. And she does crazy transitions and everybody else is, amazing, but it's about the leadership quality and the resonance of somebody's energy that makes them a good teacher. It makes them the right fit to deliver as you were saying, the message that they want to bring to their community. And I'm thrilled to know that you have married these two things and all of your experience, because you're going to serve so many people.
That is one of the nicest things anyone's ever told me. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You can pay me later. No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see if I ever get my headstand. But I think, I was telling Julie this. Julie's the owner of Soul Strong. But what drew me to the yoga studio that you work at is that it really is just the most welcoming studio I've ever been to. I've been to so many studios where it's all about image and who can do the handstand and who looks cutest in their matching Lululemon outfit. And that is just not where my physical, emotional body lives. And at Soul Strong, it really just feels more about the heart of yoga and the service and the community than anything else. So that's where my little yoga teacher dreams blossomed.
I love that. It really just gives me the squeezies, like the little heart squeezies.
The squeezies, yeah. Oh, I like that. I'm gonna borrow that. That's cute.
Please do. Yeah, I think I borrowed it from somebody else, so yeah, I'm going to use it. But I just love that you're you're going to be an amazing teacher and you're going to serve so many people. And I'm just thrilled to know you and
Mm,
get to watch all the
thank
amazing
you.
things that you're going to do.
Thank you.
It's really special.
Yeah, and just adding one more thing to my repertoire. I've got quite the
Yeah.
eclectic background at this point.
Yeah. And I love it. I think that's what makes you so special.
Oh, thank you.
So, speaking of eclectic black background, you have so many like amazing things. Like, not only are you making huge moves in the sobriety community and like bringing Reframe to more people, you're going to be bringing yoga. You're a mom. Like, you have so much stuff. And you said there's a lot of plays. I think that might be a bit of an understatement. But I would love to know through this whole journey. It could be personal, it could be business, it could really be anything. Like, what's a piece or two of advice that you have for somebody who's, you know, curious about wellness, like how to feel better about them, they're in their bodies, or they're stepping into business, they feel like they need a million certifications to get started, or just something that you want to share with folks that are listening?
Yeah, I feel like that's such a good question because I think we have this misconception of the people that we follow being experts and knowing all the things and having it all together. And I've talked with those people one on one now, and I can tell you, nobody has it together. Nobody knows what we're doing. There are people who have millions of followers who are still struggling with the same things that we're struggling with. And I think at the root of it, I just go back to this idea of we're all human and imperfect, and to live in that space and to allow yourself to be seen in kind of this idea of this messy middle is really compelling and really it attracts people to you in a different way than being the perfect image on Instagram, than being the perfect yoga teacher, than being the pillar of leadership in some business. That's so distant that it's inaccessible for people. And especially if you're a business owner, especially if you're a business owner where your business is your brand, being human and allowing yourself to be seen in imperfection and in flaws, and sharing stories that can be vulnerable and uncomfortable, I think for me has been the thing that has continued moving me forward. And it also just feels really aligned to live in that space. And I say that because I lived outside that space for a long time. There was a period kind of in my middle where I thought I had to be curated, and I thought I had to be the kind of person who spoke to all people, who was everyone's cup of tea. And I really squashed a lot of who I am. And I really only shared things that were perfect, and I only had this perfect business image, and I only I was very neutral. I was very vanilla, and that not only didn't work, that not only didn't attract the right kind of people that I want to work with, but it felt very wrong. And that is also, ironically, when my alcohol use escalated quite a bit. And I think part of that was just obviously the mental health and the motherhood, but also this idea of not living in your full iteration and not living as your whole authentic self. There's a disconnect and kind of this dis-ease that comes from that, and it shows. So long-winded answer, but my first answer is just to be who you are, and allow yourself to be seen as imperfect and as somebody who doesn't have all the answers, because nobody really wants the person who has all the answers. Nobody really needs that. They want somebody who can connect to them on a human level. And my second, I have two. I'm going to give you guys two. My second is self-care above all else. And I'm very, speaking of one of the boundaries, and let me back up. I don't mean self-care like bubble baths and like face masks, and I definitely don't mean self-care as wine. That's something that grinds my gears like nobody's business. But when I mean self-care, I mean like really, really regimented boundaries, and making tough decisions, and speaking up for yourself in ways that feel uncomfortable. Now we're going to help you move forward, and saying no. And for me, when I am not in good self-care, and for me specifically, that looks like a very sacred morning routine. I have quiet time in the morning. I have reflection. That's when I like to get up at 5. I'm a morning person. And I'm very boundaried around that time and around what I will and will not do. And with the kids, like, they're going to watch Netflix if they're up at 5 because I need that morning routine. But I find when I'm off of that routine, or I'm out of step with that, or if I'm saying yes to too many things and I'm finding that my time is really crunched and I'm feeling that energy drain, then everything else falls apart. Then all of the work becomes hard and all of the work becomes an obligation, and I start experiencing burnout. And when you get to that space of burnout, you can't do anything well. I mean, you can certainly do things, but you're not doing it well. And especially if you're in a service industry, or if you're in an industry like coaching, if you have nothing to give your clients, then you will not be successful. So, and in addition to living authentically, this idea of really putting yourself first in a lot of ways. And there are parallels to this with early sobriety. I teach a lot of this idea of extreme mothering in early sobriety, where you really have to put yourself first, even if you have kids, even if you have a family and a business and a job and a house to maintain. Like, you really have to put your wellness first. And I think there are pieces of that as an entrepreneur or as a business owner that are also applicable.
That's really generous. I love both of those pieces of advice, and thank you for sharing from your heart, because I mean, I'm taking stuff from that too.
Mm,
I think as, as business owners and in the wellness space too,
mm,
it might be trite, but there's that you can only give from a full cup, or you can't
right.
give from an empty cup. Like,
Right.
it's
It's
so
so
true.
funny. There's so many trite phrases, but it's like, there's quite a bit of truth to it.
Because they work,
Yeah.
because it's true. Yes.
Right.
And sometimes you get reminded several times. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
I should pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's really, really great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So what kind of cool stuff do you have coming up that we can be a part of?
That's a great question. Well, I do a Instagram live every Friday. We call it Feel Good Fridays. It is a mental health chat where I interview another therapist or psychologist, or we've got a neuroscientist coming on soon. And this is on the Reframe Instagram. I should mention it's at Reframe_app. But I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do every Friday, because it's just a chance to talk to somebody else in this field that I love and am part of, but get a different perspective and really get bite-sized, tangible tools to use. That's important to me, that it's something that's accessible and you can automatically go use right away. So I do that every Friday at noon Central on the Reframe App Instagram. What else do I got going on? I think that's what we've got going on right now. I'm also a co-host of the Dry Life podcast, which is available on Apple, iTunes, all of the above. And that is a podcast for the sober and sober curious. So we bring on other folks who are alcohol free, hear their stories, learn their tips and tricks. I co-host that with my friend Kayla Lyons. And yeah, I'm always behind the scenes over at Reframe. I'm pretty busy over there.
Yes, I see your content going by, and I'm like, oh, I see that's Beth.
Yeah,
She's very busy.
that one's me. Yeah, you can tell.
Well, it's so good. We'll put links in the show notes for everybody
Perfect.
to access your amazing stuff, and then you'll have to keep us posted when you're finished with your teacher training,
I will. I will.
so I
We'll
can
see.
support
I've got a
you.
busy summer, so I'm like trying to plan my calendar and finish it. But I'll let you guys know, because I really, like I said, I love this idea of having this space for folks who are sober curious, alcohol free, and I already have an idea for the name of it and everything. So I'll let you know when that's ready to go.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. I just know it. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was even better than I expected. You're so great. You're so generous. And I love spending time with you. I think we're probably going to have to do this again at some
I
point.
know, perfect. Absolutely. I'll have to have you on ours.
I'd
And
love to.
I am excited because I get to hang out with you tomorrow at the summer solstice.
I can't wait. I've been looking forward to it like forever. So it's finally here.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again. And you're just amazing. And we're so excited to support you over here. So keep doing the amazing stuff.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to Third Eye on the Prize. Got an idea or something to share with Jessica? DM her on Instagram at jessicacross.co and let her know what's on your mind. We're so grateful for your support, especially as a small woman-led business. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.